Hello everyone, welcome back for another Azure video. Today we are going to have an introduction to Azure Event Grid. Event Grid is a fully managed event service that enables you to easily manage events across many different Azure services and applications. In simple words, it is a service that allows you to send messages, route them to endpoints, and consume them with code or without code whatsoever, depending on the case. It also enables almost real-time delivery at scale. Azure Event Grid supports a push model. Your application will never have to ask for events. Instead, events are delivered immediately to the endpoint that you specify. This means your code can respond to events as they happen. The infrastructure is fully managed through a serverless model, it automatically scales to meet your demands, and you pay only as much as you consume. In this demo, we are going to create a storage event trigger in Data Factory, which will automatically run a pipeline once we upload a new file in a storage account. We are going to do the same using a logic app, just to have an idea of how to do it. The second example would be to create a publisher to push messages and a subscriber which will receive those messages. Before we jump into action, let's take a quick look into the documentation. You will find this diagram in the Azure documentation, and this diagram describes what an Azure Event Grid is and all the elements pertinent to Azure Event Grid. Here we have first the events. The events are the data or information traveling through Azure Event Grid, and they are actions that took place in a system. We have the event publishers. Publishers can be users or third parties that send events to Azure Event Grid, and we have topics. Event topics classify events into groups and provide an endpoint where the sources transmit events. We have two kinds of topics, the system topics that are built-in topics available under Azure services. These topics are not visible on Azure subscription level because they are owned by the publisher, but we can subscribe to those topics and consume events. Then we have the custom topics that are topics that we can create as users or third-party applications can create, and we can see them in the Azure subscription once they have been created. Next, we have the Azure Event Grid subscriptions. Event subscriptions outline the event residing under a topic. Events can be filtered based on their type or subject, so we can be sure that the event handler receives only the relevant events. The destination endpoints that can be configured with the event subscriptions are Azure Automation, Azure Functions, Azure Event Hubs, Hybrid Connections, Logic Apps, QStorage, Service Bus, Webhooks, etc. etc. Last but not least, we have the event handlers. An event handler is an application or resource that receives events from Azure Event Grid. Actually, it is the destination in simple terms. This is where the place where the event is sent. Subscribers can decide which event they prefer to handle, and the event grid notifies every subscriber once this new event is ready to be consumed. So when to use Azure Event Grid? First, when you want to build event-driven serverless solutions. Being a serverless service, Azure Event Grid easily fits with many serverless architectures. You can use Event Grid with Azure Function Apps and Logic Apps and API management and other Azure services. When you want to receive events from Azure services, for instance, when a new blob is created in your storage account, or when you receive events from external applications or third-party applications that publish events to your Azure Event Grid, and you have a subscriber application that processes those events. This is the pipeline that we created in our previous video that generates sequence numbers. If you are interested in learning about sequences, just watch my previous video. The purpose here now is to trigger this pipeline once we upload a new CSV file in our storage account. So let's go into our storage account. Under containers, I have this input container. So once we upload the CSV file here, this event will trigger the pipeline in Data Factory. So this pipeline here. We can achieve this by clicking on this Add Trigger button and then New. Choose a trigger, click on New, and then provide a name, and then select the type. Here it's storage events type. Azure subscription, the storage account name, the container name. You have to provide the container name. Be careful, you have to use slashes like that. Then you can specify the prefix and the suffix. For me, it's only the suffix, so I can use .csv file, and the event would be when a blob is created. Click on continue. Now it's empty. Click on continue and click on OK. Then publish this trigger. Once we publish the trigger, we are going to upload a CSV file that would trigger this pipeline. And this event will trigger the data factory pipeline. Now, let's move to our storage account. I think, yeah, the trigger has been created. You can see the trigger here under this manage blade and then triggers, and you can see the trigger has already started. So if we upload the CSV file, let me upload the CSV file, that would trigger the data factory pipeline. So, okay, so we uploaded CSV file. Now if we go into monitor, under trigger runs, you will see that the trigger runs successfully. And if you go into pipeline runs, you will see that the pipeline has already started and it's running. So we uploaded a new CSV file that in this event triggered the pipeline. Before, although it seems that we didn't use event grid, behind the scenes we are using event grid. Something I forgot to mention. So before you create a trigger, go into your subscription and scroll down to resource providers, search for event grid, and come on, so event grid, so it's registered. The status should be registered. If it's not, click on the register button here, right, and register your event grid provider, otherwise it's not going to work. Now let's move to let's see perform exactly the same thing using logic apps. Create a new logic app, click on add, select your resource group, let's say data factory demo, and select I'm West EU. Consumption, yep, we want the plant type consumption, just pay as much as we consume, and review and create, and let's create a new logic app. The deployment is done. Let's move to the logic app designer. Scroll down to black and select blank logic app. And now what we have to do is use the Azure event grid. Here, click here, subscription, select your subscription, the resource type, and that would be storage accounts, resource name, and event type, blob created, right? And we don't need to add a new parameter. Next step, that would be to trigger our data factory pipeline. We can use create pipeline run. Create a pipeline run, click on here, select your subscription, your resource group, data factory, and the pipeline name. For me, that will be pipeline 2. You can add the parameter if you want, but we don't want that. Click on save. So when the event occurs in our storage account, when we upload the file, then this event will trigger the data factory pipeline. It's exactly the same what we did here with the trigger. Let me remove the trigger from here because that would create an issue. Not create an issue, but it's going to trigger the pipeline twice. There is no point of doing that. So back to our logic app. If we run the trigger, now if we upload the same CSV file, let me upload the same CSV file, and this here, it's going to trigger logic apps. So let's go to overview and refresh, runs history and succeeded. Here you can see it succeeded, and in theory, if we go into monitor here, we should see the pipeline running. Yes, you can see triggered by manual trigger. This is how you actually trigger a pipeline in Logic Apps. It's exactly the same thing as the trigger that we used in Data Factory. Time for our second example, and this example will be more complete because we are going to use Logic Apps to create a publisher that would push events to an event grid topic, and we are going to use Logic Apps and Azure functions to subscribe to this topic and consume the events. Let's start by creating a new Logic Apps here. Click on Add. Select your resource group. Yep, I'm in West EU. Your plan type should be consumption, and then review and create a logic apps in new one. That would, again, we will use the same trigger. Once a blob is created, it will trigger the publisher and will push the event to the topic. So let's create a new logic app. Again, the same, so we have to use Azure Event Grid, subscription, resource type, storage accounts, resource name, and we are okay. Now let's create a new step, and this time what we have to do is use the Azure Event Grid publish here. Click on publish and click on change connection if you have already. I have already created a few connections, but let's add a new one because this is the screen that you will see in your case, assuming that you haven't done this before. Connection name, provide a connection name, grid, and here we need to create a topic now because you can see we need the topic endpoint and the SaaS token. Let's go back and create a resource. Click on create a resource, search for event grid topic, create a topic here, click on create, select your resource group again, the name of the topic, the region, West EU, and leave everything as is, review and create, and this will create an event grid topic that will give us a topic endpoint, and that's what we want now, right? Let's wait for it to finish the deployment. Click on go to resource, And here you see we have the topic endpoint here. Click on that and then go back to Logic Apps, paste the endpoint, and we need also the SAS token. So under access keys, copy key 1 or key 2, whatever you like, click on create, and now this is this here we have this is going to provide you this screen here, and we need to select the ID. Usually we use the GUID function. Click on OK. Subject test, event type test. Let's pass a JSON. Let's call it test, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And click on save. And this, once this is triggered, it will push the event to the topic, but we won't be able to see the event because we haven't created a subscriber yet, and this is what we are going to do. Let's go back into let's create a new logic app. Click add here, click on logic app name, so sub it west EU consumption, that's fine, review and create. And now we are going to create a subscriber to subscribe to the topic and consume the events once they have been pushed to the topic. We are going to use the template when a HTTP request is received. Click on save, and here a URL will be generated, so click on that, copy that URL, go back to the topic and create a new subscription. So create one, call it whatever you like, create demo, and here under endpoint details you have to pick the endpoint type. In this case we are going to use webhook, and for the endpoint paste the URL that we just copied from the logic app. Click on create, and this will create you can see a subscription, right? Now if we upload the file, this will trigger the first logic app and will push the event to the event grid, to the topic, and the second logic app that has the subscriber is going to consume the data. It's going to receive this this JSON that we are going to push to the topic. So let me upload the file again, and here it is. Let's see what we get. As you can see, the publisher ran fine, ran successfully, and if you see the event grid topic, if you scroll down and you see the event subscriptions, you can see that it succeeded. Click for the last 1 hour and you will see the event here. And if you go into the subscriber that we have in the second logic app and click on overview, you will see under runs history, you will see that it succeeded. So if you click here, it's going to open the logic app run, and you can see the data that we pushed to the topic, right? Perfect, splendid. But let's say we don't want to use logic apps to subscribe to the topic, we want to use an Azure function. So let's create an Azure function, create one. And select your runtime. I just used Node.js, West Europe, and yep, serverless, that's fine. We don't care about that. Review and create, and we are going to create a function that which is going to subscribe to the topic and receive those events, right? Let's wait for the deployment to finish to create our function. Let's go to our resource here, create a new function. Let's create a new function that will use, if you scroll down, an Azure event grid trigger. Click on create, developing portal, that's fine. And we have a new event grid function. If you check the code plus test, you will see the code here. I think we just print the message that we received. Yeah, nothing much. And under monitor, we would be able to see the message that was published, that was pushed by the publisher. But before we do that, of course, we have to subscribe to the topic, right? So if we go back to our topic and create a new event subscription, let's call this fuck. And for endpoint type, select Azure function. Endpoint, select the endpoint, select your function app, and your function. Everything is auto-completed here because I don't have any other choices. So confirm selection and create this subscription. And now the event function is going to receive the message, this JSON message that we push using the publisher. So here in a bit you will see that this will get some results back if we upload, when we upload a CSV file. So let's upload the CSV file and overwrite, upload. And now, the moment of truth, we will see how the Azure function behaves. It will take a couple of minutes, but you will see the results here under the monitor tab. And if you click here and you see the message, you can see the JSON that we pushed to the topic. This is it, guys. This is how you can use Event Grid in Data Factory, in Logic Apps and Azure Functions. The integration between all those services is seamless, as you just witnessed. We didn't have to write any code whatsoever to use Event Grid. Plus, there are many Azure services that you can use as a publisher or as a subscriber. I hope you learned something new today and you enjoyed the video. If you like the video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.